Welcome to Chop Talk, Lumberjack Sports Podcast, brought to you by Warren Bank and Trust. Once again, you can always check out all of our sponsors of SaleemRiverChronicle.com's Lumberjack sports coverage on our sports page, during our game report, on Saturdays, on weekends. Those are available on Saturday through Sunday. Usually we even keep them up to date through Monday morning. You can check out all of our sponsors there on those game reports at SaleemRiverChronicle.com. Once again, I'm Rob Reep, alongside my buddy Dennen Cuthbertson. We're talking Lumberjack football tonight. Dennen, we're getting a little deeper into the playoffs. Some teams have already played 2 weeks in a row. Jack's going into their second week of the playoffs after defeating Lone Oak 54-19 last Friday night at home at Jim Hurley Jr. Stadium. Big statement win from this Lumberjack football team here at this point in the season, especially.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I felt like this was probably our most complete game all season. I really thought Lone Oak was going to be a much stiffer challenge. Not that you could tell they were talented, they were good. I mean, when I walked out onto the field and was, just kind of looking at them, I thought, man, they looked the part.
Yeah.
They had some size. They had some athletic-looking kids. They had a pretty decent number of kids. I think they had about 40 players. Of course, they might have moved up ninth grade. I know they had a ninth grader starting at quarterback, but that was kind of an injury replacement earlier in the year. They might have had some more ninth graders up, which is something that we elected really not to do. But yeah, I thought this was our most complete game of the year, and I think it was probably what we needed going into as you get deeper into the playoffs. And like you said, you've got some teams that have played 2 games. You even have a team or two like Nashville who hadn't played a game yet because they had a forfeit. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting the further we get along.
The 2020 football season just continues to give us fun stuff. But I tell you what, Dennen, complete, that term you use, complete game, is just, I think that's the best way I've heard it said so far over the last few days. It felt like we saw, to me at least, a defense that we've seen compete well all year. That's not a surprise to see our defense playing well. Our offense really, really stepped up and put up some big numbers, which hasn't been the case all year.
Yeah, first of all, for the defense, I kind of had a good feeling whenever in the first quarter and we got up, it was 14-0, I guess. And I think that was when they went down and scored, but they had to score. They scored on a trick play, it was like a reverse pass back to the quarterback who took it into the end zone. And that told me that, okay, that was probably a play they wanted to run in the third or fourth quarter.
Yeah.
If this was a one-score game and they had to pull it out of their, bag of tricks in the first quarter, and I thought, okay, they're pressing. They know this game's about to get out of hand, and they needed to score. And then, of course, they scored, but then we went right back down and scored. And like I said, so really from the defense, they had to score on a trick play, and they scored late, I think, once. It wasn't necessarily a perfect game. The quarterback for Lone Oak was very good, especially when you consider the fact he's just a ninth grader. He will probably be someone to be reckoned with throughout the state, the next few years. But offensively, we ran the ball very well.
Yeah.
I think that was Traylon Marshall's best game this year. And I think, and really the thing that makes it more impressive is that, we had a couple of normal guys not starting on the offensive line, and we went through it. It was like we didn't miss a beat. And then the passing game, first touchdown of the game was a perfect pass on a corner route to Jakari Lee. I really thought like that. And then special teams, I thought kickoffs and kickoff coverage were pretty good for the most part. We did miss a couple of extra points, but I really think Jose Jacinto was kind of stabilized that. The one that he missed, he just pushed right a little bit. It still had good height and everything. And then, if he struggles, you've still got Jesse and others behind him that can come in and, kick for you. So, I don't even know if we had to punt, but I do know I will say this. You can tell the difference because Lone Oak special teams were nowhere near as good. Their punt, I don't know if they had a punt snap that did not hit the turf before it got to the punter all whole night. They had the play right before halftime where the referees, I don't think, knew what happened.
That was just a bad ordeal all around.
I mean, I really think, from what I was told, was that I think Maddox hit him about the time that he was trying to drop the ball and kick it. And I think he got a leg on it. I don't know if he actually kicked it, but he kicked it or booted it, hit it off his shin or whatever, forward a little bit. And I think the referees want to let it play like a fumble. And then I think it looked like somebody jumped on it for a split second, and I think that's when they blew it dead. But then, of course, the ball just rolled out again.
Yeah.
And so I guess they talked, and they were like, look, guys, we're just going to do this, play this over.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny. It's funny, like, as confusing as probably what you just stated is, that's the most complete, detailed version of it I've gotten so far. Because, I mean, just from the stands point of view, I had no clue what was going on. I honestly thought they'd just blown it dead, and the rule was they had to just replay it anyway.
Well, this is what
there was no one that recovered the fumble necessarily.
What I thought happened was that Maddox got back there, but we didn't block the kick. The kid he ended up kicking it, but he kicked it on the ground, and then it hit somebody. Well, if it hit one of our guys, as long as it was going forward and was an actual kick like a punt, it's down where it is.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's our ball. Now, if it would have hit if it would have hit one of our players, it would have been a fumble. Excuse me, correct me right. But if it would have hit one of their players, it would have been like down. It's just like same concept when they run down the field 30 yards or whatever, and one of their players touches and it's down and it's our ball. So unless it was and I thought that since the line, I thought it must have hit one of their linemen, maybe the ball was dead. Maybe that's what they were ruling, and they were just going to give us the ball from that spot, and we'd have 20-something seconds left or 16 seconds, whatever it was. And then I just looked up on the clock, and there was 9 seconds left, and then they were punting again.
Yeah.
So I really think that the refs just said, we don't know what happened. We might have had an inadvertent whistle or something, and they just said, we're just going to play this again. And luckily, it
didn't hurt us.
It was 35-13 at halftime, maybe, I think. So luckily,
in a close game, that could be a huge turning point.
If that would have been a one-score game, even a two-score game at halftime, I mean, still, even at 3 scores, you're still not necessarily.
You're not in the clear.
You're not in the clear, and but I mean, I think if it would have been closer, there would have been a much bigger confrontation, probably between both coaching staffs and the referees, because. I mean, like I said, I still don't know exactly what happened, but luckily that didn't ruin the game for us, and it ended up, we ended up marching on to the big win. But yeah, like I said, I think if you wanted to say what would a perfect Lumberjack playoff victory look like for this team, and what have we seen this team do several games this year? Start slow.
Yeah.
Start slow. Defense usually still solid, but the offense starts slow. But then we turn it on later on. Well, we started out fast early, and we kept the foot on the pedal, which is when you're playing the playoffs. When you get to playing some of these teams, against Helena, you can start out slow, and you're still going to end up okay. But when you start getting into where we are in the playoffs, you start out slow, you might not be able to get back into that game. And so I was happy with what I saw Friday night.
You're kind of hoping that maybe that was the first real sign of a team that's kind of on the upswing.
Yes.
That's going to get hot at just this right time. And we'll see how that goes the next few weeks, or at least this week. We got to get through this week first.
Yeah,
but, we do have some highlights we're going to show you here in just a minute or so. I do want to talk about just one guy that stood out to me. I thought he had a breakout game, at least watching highlights. Sometimes highlights can kind of fool you in terms because stats are they don't always line up exactly the same. But I thought Tayshawn Johnson had a heck of a ball game.
Yeah. Yeah,
was really impressed with him. I mean, he's had some good ball games this year, but I don't know. I felt like all around our skill guys had a pretty top performance.
I mean, Tayshawn's probably, I don't have any knowledge, and I haven't been, timing these guys in the 40, but I think Tayshawn is probably our fastest guy. If not, I mean, he's definitely one in the top 3.
Yeah.
And Traylon Marshall's up there too. He can fly as well. But I mean, Tayshawn's only a sophomore, but he's got some wheels, and we've saw some creative, getting him the ball in the speed sweep. We haven't thrown it to him as much, but it's funny though. I mean, really, we've kind of turned into a little bit of a running team.
We have,
as the season has progressed,
out of necessity in some ways.
Well, I think part of it is necessity, and part of it is just for whatever we're really good at it.
Yeah.
So it's just if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I don't mind it. I like it, and again, a lot of Coach Embry's teams in the past that have been really successful, even though some of them have had really good passing games. Most of them have, but they've also been able to run the football. On the defensive side of the football, a guy that had a big ball game was Xander Hemphill. He was also today named the State Farm Lumberjack of the Week. Just continue to be impressed by Xander.
Yeah, I mean, he flies around to the football so much, and he plays with a little bit of a kind of a reckless abandon sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can tell he hits people so hard I think he hurts himself sometimes. Just gets shaken up a little bit. But I mean, really, every week I think you could give the player of the game to someone in our linebacking core.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it could be Cedric Calvert, it could be Maddox Laster, it could be Xander Hemphill. And, Xander's had several games like this, and that's something I'm glad he got recognized for it. But, I mean, you could probably pick any one of those 3 on almost any given week, and nobody would complain about it.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, Cedric, at least I remember one play he made. We are going to have a highlight of it here in a few minutes, I think. He made a play just on the far side of the field, on the visitor's side, on the east side.
I know which one you're talking about already.
Crazy athletic to get there and make that play. And Maddox is one of these guys, Maddox is doing a great job at quarterback for Warren, but he's clearly a linebacker. I mean, you can just tell he is a linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably what most people would take away. He's a linebacker playing quarterback, not a quarterback playing linebacker. And that's not a
it's not a diss.
Yeah,
it's just he's a good linebacker. That's the thing. But the thing I always notice about him, he's just around the football.
Yeah.
Even if he's not the guy who makes the final tackle, he's somewhere in the vicinity. He's there trying to help make a play, and he's a big presence in there. But anything that surprised you out of Lone Oak?
Man, I mean, I just not necessarily Lone Oak, I guess. I thought it was going to be a more competitive game. I mean, I really thought we would win, and I really thought we would probably win by 2 or 3 scores.
We're on the same page there.
But 54-19, not what I had dialed up. I mean, and the thing is, when you looked at them, and of course, looks can always be deceiving, but I hear coaches always talk about the way they look when they get off the bus. If they look the part, and they looked the part.
Yeah.
I mean, they had good linemen, they had good skill guys. But I guess in a way, maybe we shouldn't be as surprised, because I mean, it's hard as a 9th grader to be a starting quarterback and expect that to be a good situation.
Yeah.
As talented as that kid was, and as talented as he is, and I thought he is, I think, it's tough. But I mean, like I said, I think mostly it was just the score. We've played Lone Oak some over the years, not necessarily recently, but I mean, the games were usually more competitive than this. And I mean, Lone Oak's beat us the last couple of times we played them. And they have a good program. It seem like they're always in the playoffs. They're not necessarily always a 1 seed or conference champion, but they're in the top 2, 3, 4 of their conference, and have the ability to make a run. And I mean, like I said, just for us to beat what I considered a pretty quality opponent the way we did was eye-opening to me.
Yeah. Well, like I said, let's jump into some highlights, because we do have some here. And really, before we get to the first highlight we've got, Warren gets into this position. Now, obviously gets the kickoff first, I believe, if I remember correctly. And a Traylon Marshall run off to the right side, I believe, gets us into Lone Oak territory. And then we pick up here at around the 33, I believe, somewhere in there. And just a handoff here, once again to Marshall. He breaks into the red zone, and just big gain on the play.
Yeah, I mean, you just tell, for one, the blocking up front was good. And then you just saw that burst of speed. There were guys in position to make the play, and they just didn't. They did. He was too fast for him. I mean, really. I mean, that's just what it amounts to. There's 1, 2, and that guy finally did make the tackle, but he made it about 10 yards downfield from where he first contacted him. So yeah, I mean, like I said, that was just a – that's one of those things when Traylon has that breakaway aspect to his game, and that's something that we've kind of talked about how we don't necessarily feel like we might not have as much of as maybe some past teams, but we've got it with him.
We do. Next play, this is, I believe, the first touchdown here. It's just going to be a corner route to Jakari Lee. So Lassiter takes it, steps back. And Lee's just wide open there in the corner of the end zone. Just how Coach Embry drew it up.
Yeah, I mean, that wide open, right on the money. I mean, there's really not much else that you can say about that, except that was exactly what you wanted and exactly how, Coach Embry would have drawn that one up.
And then on the defensive side of the football, first possession here for the Lone Oak Jackrabbits. They started off before this play, the first play of the game, tried an option to the left, and it just blew up on them.
Fumbled it, and we were able to make the tackle. I thought the kid ended up picking it up and was going to try to make a play, but he didn't pick it up immediately, and we got there and tackled. I thought we had a chance to, pick that one up maybe, or force him to fumble again and get it. But the defense flew around the ball, and that put him in a bad spot.
Yeah, really good pursuit play just all around by this Warren defense this week. And then this is fourth down, I think fourth and fourth or five, maybe somewhere in like that. And they're just going to try to go off this right edge.
Yeah.
But Warren's just there to blow it up. Again, you're putting a freshman in this type of position. That's a lot of yards to make on this defense.
Yeah, I mean, and you saw, I think that was Jet Reep on that side who pushed his guy kind of into the backfield and to the side, and he just couldn't get outside, and then Maddox ended up cleaning up the play and making the tackle. But, I mean, that was just I think that was we knew that was kind of what they were going to do. Quarterback run was going to be a big part of the game, and, on that play, we stopped it. I mean, it was not – I mean, I guess you maybe could question on, 4th and 4, 4th and 5 or whatever, running the ball anyway, but I think they kind of felt like they had to go for it there for whatever reason, and it didn't work out for them.
Well, and they've kind of got that in their DNA. I mean, we knew coming into this ball game they were going to onside it some.
Yeah,
Embry already told us that, and so I don't know that it was. I wasn't stunned to see him come out going for it there.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, the game is moving to a point where all the statistics and percentages and everything tells you that at fourth and a certain distance, you should just go for it.
Yeah.
There's not much difference in giving the ball over at the 45-yard line as it is punting it to the 15 or 10. You know, I mean, especially if you're playing against a team that you might not think you can stop.
Yeah. Points are more important. It's a game of points.
And, you just can't possession. Having the ball is a big part of the game. And, on the pro level, college level, teams are starting to go for it more, which I like to see in a way. I mean, it makes it a little bit more fun, and you do. The rules allow you to have 4 downs to get 10 yards. Now the punishment is if you don't get those 10 yards, you turn it over right where you're at.
Yeah.
But I like to see that. And, of course, as we saw, their punting game was not a strength of the team, to say the least.
Then we move on. Lumberjacks have the ball right on the 20-yard line here. And I believe that was that Bird in the backfield. Hand off to Marshall, and he gets into the end zone.
Yeah, I'm not. I was just watching Traylon. I'm not real sure if that was Peyton or not in the backfield.
I think we can get back to the beginning here. I think it is Bird.
Yes, he's got both of his gloves on. I can tell. Yep.
Just off the right tackle.
Yeah.
Push the end out.
I mean, that's just easy. I mean, he didn't even get touched from 20 yards out. So that tells you, for one, that's more of that the blocking was superb on that play. If you don't get touched on a running play like that, the blocking is very good. And another thing, too, I think maybe something we've kind of overlooked and maybe haven't talked about as much is just, I think we've maybe featured it a little bit more, but is this, kind of, I guess you could call it a wildcat with Peyton Bird at quarterback.
Yeah.
The more that we run that and the more that we're successful doing that, and I know later in the game Peyton keeps the ball on some carries and gets some big yardage. That's tough to defend when you watch it on film. That gives the defense just another thing to think about. And, of course, he can throw it a little bit, too, if he has to. And I know we tried to throw a pass over the top or two with him, so it's on film, too.
This next one is one that I really I had to get. We did a little bit more work on it in editing during our game highlights over the weekend because it's just great downfield blocking by our receivers. But it's going to be just a little pass out into the flats. We put it in slow motion here for you. Just a great block right there by who was that? I'm not even sure who had the block, but that was Payne on the carry.
Jakari, and that was New Orleans on the catch and run.
Yeah.
Pancake block, receivers blocking. I mean, if you're going to run those types of screens to your receivers, the other receivers that aren't getting the ball thrown to them have to block. Otherwise, they don't work at all if nobody blocks, really. And, I mean, he basically, he took out one guy, and he was in the way of another guy. So I know New Orleans is probably thinking, man, I can't believe he didn't score on that one. But then on the next play here, we hand it off to Johnson. And this is Bird in the backfield again. Takes it, and does he get touched by anybody? I don't think he did.
So. Yeah, I tell you what, on that previous play we were talking about, in real time, I think you were down near that end.
I was right there.
I thought Payne might have gotten in. Like I thought at first he might have, but upon replay, you can see clearly his knee
came down. Yeah, I mean he just got kind of tripped up from behind, and it just
we'll show it again right here once more and. Yep, just knee went down about the one, and then of course the touchdown that we just talked about. As was that Johnson? Yeah,
that was Johnson
walking in, and then this next play, of course, more Traylon Marshall. Just what a big night! You go back and watch these highlights, you just see what a player he is.
I mean, and that was more. We've talked about the blocking. The blocking was not bad on that play, but there were a couple of kids who should have made that tackle for a lot less gain than it was, and Traylon just broke it.
Well, and he cuts it almost back across field again.
It across the field, and there was nobody else on the field on Lone Oak's side that could catch him.
This next highlight we've got is the one we were talking about earlier from Cedric. Just an unbelievable play out here wide to the left as he comes through. Nobody there to stop him, and he takes full advantage.
Yeah, I mean, this play, in number 11, there was a play or two where number 11 had some closing speed on some guys and thought he was fast. And, of course, I think, he showed it there when Cedric caught him, and he spiked the ball and got a personal foul penalty. I'm sure he couldn't believe that one of our linebackers block. I'm sure he couldn't believe that play was not there and that he couldn't outrun Cedric, to get to the outside. And again, it's just, sometimes maybe, maybe our players aren't maybe as technically sound as you want to be, or do everything right. But at the end of the day, on defense, and we've talked about it a little, we touched on it earlier, all three of our linebackers just kind of have that instinct to be around the ball, and they know how to go get there and make the tackle, and Cedric's so good at it, and Maddox is good at it, and Xander's good at it. They're all good at it, but it's a joy to watch Cedric play, whether he's running the football or tackling the ball carrier like on that play.
Yeah, he's a fun one to watch. Jakari, to me, is a fun one to watch, and Payne is also just a lot of fun to watch to me. There's several guys on this team. Maddox is a fun one to watch.
I mean, there's really – I don't know if there's a player that's not fun to watch. But, I mean, it is such a joy to watch some guys the way they play. And that's one thing I think. If you want to make complaints about, okay, maybe we didn't do this technically right, or maybe we didn't run a play right, because it happens. I mean, trust me, when I'm home games, when I'm on the sideline and I can hear what Coach Embry has to say, sometimes it's not always the best, most positive thing in the world. People mess up. But two things can make up for that. One's talent. Yeah. If you're more talented than other players, on that other run, Traylon, that he scored on the play before this, that's a 5-6 yard gain probably for a normal kid, and that's great. If you have 5 yards of carry, you take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. But the ability to turn that play into a touchdown, that was talent. That was speed, talent, athleticism. But then the other thing too is effort, playing hard. And if you play hard, I can't remember, I probably had several coaches tell us this. I'm sure you heard the comment too, but it was just, I don't necessarily care if you mess up, but if you are going to mess up, at least be going 110%.
Yeah.
At least put in the effort. And I think that's something that we've seen this team do every week.
Yeah, and, we talked about it earlier in the show with Xander. There's also just a bit of instinct in some of these guys where it sort of just kind of comes natural, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think with Xander that's the case.
Yes.
He kind of naturally reads it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things like Xander's always. I remember there was an interception or two that he had last year that were just, it was almost like the quarterback threw it right to him.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know, maybe that's, you could make the argument, maybe that's a bad quarterback, but I think Xander was just in the right spot.
He's just feeling it out.
And then, the game this year at Texarkana, when they ran a little wide receiver screen and Jakari popped the kid and he fumbled or bopped it up in the air or whatever. But then what do you see? You think the play's over, but oh no, Xander Hemphill has the ball and he's running down the sideline. It's just like he's always around it and knows that something's going to happen.
All right, once again, let's take a look at the next highlight right here after that Cedric Calvert, and there's the flag once again. And this is going to be the Bird handoff, I believe, where he just takes it to the house off the left.
Yeah, I mean, just a fake. There's a guy there that has a chance to make a play. Doesn't. He breaks the tackle and then speed. I mean, he gets to the outside and outruns everybody. And, that's another thing, too. I think Peyton's probably been a little – it seems like he's just kind of had some little nagging injuries, all throughout the year. But I think, hopefully – he didn't have to play much against DeWitt, which was a game a little bit later in the season, and then he didn't have to play much against Helena, and then we got a week off. Maybe he's finally maybe he's close to. I'm sure he's not 100% because at this point, when you're playing football, you're probably almost nobody's 100%. Yeah. But maybe he's at least 85, 90%, and you can kind of tell because it looked like he had a little bit extra gear on that one.
Yeah, I think we've got a question about him in our part 2, which is coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Let's move on and let's talk a little bit about what's coming up. And not only for Warren, but the rest of this bracket. Let's first address Warren. Warren going to be taking on Arkadelphia Friday night. Luckily, this is at home. This is at Jim Hurley Jr. What are your thoughts, man? Where's this thing looking to you? How's it looking?
We were kind of talking about it when I got here, and off camera, and I keep going back and forth. I keep thinking we've really hit our stride. It might not necessarily matter who's in our way, and we're playing at home. And I know maybe your home field advantage is not quite as much as it usually is because you're not going to have all the fans there, be able to make as much noise. But then I go back and I think, man, Arkadelphia, they're 2 years removed from a state championship, 2 years removed from when they came to Jim Hurley Jr. Stadium, and it was a mercy rule at halftime. It was 35-0 at halftime. And then, of course, the year before that, they beat us in the state championship by 1 point. So there's some history between these two teams. And Arkadelphia is a good program, but Arkadelphia to me is like Crossit. They had COVID issues and weren't able to play a number of their games. They're 8-1 right now, and they went 3-1 in their conference. And the 3 wins, because they were doing it by wins, relegated them to the, I think, 4th seed. They didn't get to play Nashville and Joe T. Robinson, so, and they lost to Malvern. And Malvern had a decent year, but I mean, and that conference beat up on each other. They all lost to Nashville, lost to Robinson, or Nashville beat Robinson. Nashville lost to Ashdown. Ashdown lost to Robinson and a couple other people. Malvern led Robinson at halftime, and I think they had a bunch of players out. So yeah, that conference is that's kind of a murderer's row there of teams. So you just don't know, but I mean. That's the thing. If Arkadelphia had played Nashville and Robinson, I think we'd have a better grasp on what this team is. They're good, no doubt. I know that they're good. But would they have finished 3rd or 4th like they did anyway? Or would they have been able to beat Nashville or Robinson and maybe be your conference champion or your 2nd seed out of that conference? Maybe. That's the same thing with Crossit with us. Crossit was our 5th seed or 4th seed with 3, because they only got to play 3 conference games. They won all 3 of them, but they didn't play Hamburg. They didn't play Monticello. They didn't play us. Mm-hmm. They did play Dumas, who was the conference champion. They beat them, but they beat them by 1 point in a controversial ending of all things. So Dumas had a chance to win that game. So what do you have? It's the same thing. Is Arkadelphia a title contender, or are they just a good, solid,
good football team?
Good team that's in the playoffs? Like, every team now is a good team that's left. But are they like one of those legit title contenders, or does everything have to fall into place for them to get to War Memorial?
Definitely a team you got to take serious. Like Coach Embry would always tell us, if you've had a good season, but if you're playing football after Thanksgiving, and everybody left now is. So you got to take them serious.
And it's a little bit different circumstances.
A little bit different.
I mean, still, everybody that's left now is good. And I will say this: I did look at one thing. The comparing scores is a fool's errand. It never really works out. I remember. I can't remember how long ago it was now. There were a couple years ago that there was a website that you could go to, and basically any team in college football, you could make the argument that they were the national champion based on other scores of other games. Like even UAPB. UAPB beat somebody that beat somebody else, that they beat somebody else, that beats, and it went all the way down to where 100 games down the line, so-and-so beat Alabama, and so you can make the argument they were national champions. You can't put a whole lot into it. But in high school football, I know me and you were not watching film.
You're right.
We haven't seen Arkadelphia play.
As dedicated as we are to this,
we can only be in one place on Friday nights anyway.
Right.
But I will say one thing I noticed, and is that Arkadelphia played Greenbrier this year. Mm-hmm. They beat Greenbrier 35-28. Greenbrier went and played Monticello whenever Monticello had a conference game canceled, or postponed, whatever, no contest. And Greenbrier had to recover an onside kick and kick a field goal within the last, minute and a half to win that game 37-36. And Monticello, while they finished second in our conference, again, how good are all of these teams? How good is Dumas? How good are we? How good is Monticello? How good is Crossit? We all didn't get to play each other, so it didn't play out on the field. But it tells me, at the very least, that those teams, and of course, again, that Greenbrier, Arkadelphia, they may have had players out when they played each other. Greenbrier may have had some players out when they played Monticello, but Greenbrier did get beat last week, but they made it. They won their first round playoff game in 5A. So it tells me that I think, like I said, I don't know how much you can take away from it, but at the very least, I think all of these teams are similarly talented.
Yeah.
There's not a big margin for error either way. Now, that said, who knows? One of us, maybe what happened to Lone Oak. Maybe we beat them like we did Lone Oak. Maybe they beat us like they did a couple years ago when they came down here. I don't know. But I think it'll be a close game. I think it will be a very competitive game. I would say
they're going to come ready for a battle.
Yeah, I would say I would be surprised if either team wins by more than 14 points, either side.
I think that's a good bet.
I mean, that's just how I feel about it.
We'll get your official pick here in a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm still going to have to think about it because I don't have one.
Well, we're going to nail you down. We're going to nail you down on that. Let's take a look at the bracket. We got a couple of we're going to break it up into two segments here. Top half of the brackets first. Just kind of looking right off the bat, an 8-4A team went out last week. DeWitt traveled up to Shiloh Christian and hey, had to deal with the wrath of that.
That game probably went about as well as it could have for them, honestly.
Yeah. 48-12 was the final. Shiloh Christian moving on to play Malvern. Malvern put a stomping on Truman, 54-0 to move into that game versus Shiloh.
Yeah.
Dumas, another 8-4A team, still in this thing. They beat Bauxite last week, 45-17. They will play Gosnell, who defeated Dardanelle, 48-26. Thoughts on that Dumas-Gosnell game?
It's going to be tough. I think Dumas, it's good for them. They're playing at home. Gosnell, that's a long trip. That's on the Missouri border, and so that's going to be a long trip for them. Gosnell has a couple of kids I think that have been offered by Kansas, and I think some other like Arkansas State, maybe Memphis. Some other teams are involved there, but we know Dumas we beat them pretty handedly when we played them in the rain. But by all accounts, they've been a much different team and been very good since they played us. So I think Dumas being at home helps. It's a long trip for Gosnell. I was actually there were some people on the message board talking about. I remember we played Gosnell that one of the first years we won the state championship down here. It was a tremendous ball game. They were very talented. Of course, that was about 20 years ago, but so it's interesting. It's interesting seeing sometimes seeing the same teams come through.
Mm-hmm.
Just like on the top half of the Shiloh Christian. I mean, they're always in it.
Yeah.
I mean, they just always have a chance to win it. I do think though that game will be close. I think Malvern is pretty good, assuming Malvern is completely healthy and doesn't have any players missing from COVID. They played. The teams in the 7-4A, which I think is the best conference in our classification. Tough. So I think they could give Shiloh a game. But again, at this point, it's always tough to go on the road and win.
Mm-hmm.
It's always tough to go to a place like Shiloh Christian and win.
Yeah, I think I saw you were making the comment about Shiloh always being there. Warren's kind of that way. We're in.
Yeah.
I saw somebody made a comment on the Arkadelphia Warren post on Fearless, and I think the statement was something along the lines of Warren's one of those teams that you just the second the bracket comes out, you take a look at it to pray they're not on your.
They're a team when you're looking at the bracket, you notice where they are.
And Shiloh's kind of one of those teams.
Yes.
Well, there's several here. Stuttgart's next up here. Stuttgart's one of them. That's just they've got to be a favorite here to maybe make a run at this thing.
And this is the thing. This is the shame of the bracket, and I guess part of it being the COVID season and the way everything ended up. But Stuttgart. Well, for one, first I'll mention Hamburg. That game was 23-14 at halftime. Hamburg played them tough. The final score does not necessarily indicate that, but Hamburg played Stuttgart a lot tougher than I thought they would. And I'll touch on that again because Stuttgart was the conference champion in Lone Oak's conference, and we beat them. But you got Robinson playing beat Mills 63-18.
Yeah.
That game was close, though, I think, early on at halftime as well, and then Robinson flexed their muscle. But Stuttgart and Robinson are two of the teams that almost everybody would pick to win the whole thing.
Yeah, that's got to be a good game.
And they're playing in the I guess technically this is the third round now or whatever.
I'm not sure how they're doing that. If this is technically the second or third round, because I know they called the first one a play-in round.
Yeah, I guess we could call this I guess this is the
second full round.
This is the quarterfinals at the very least,
yes.
No matter what.
This Stuttgart Robinson game, if Warren was not in this thing, like this is one of those games where I would want to go watch it.
Yes.
As a neutral observer.
Yes. And I think this game will be on TV.
Yeah.
On the local channel KARZ. I think maybe channel 42. Mm-hmm. For most people. So
I'm sure it'll be streamed somewhere as well.
Yes. So if you don't get a chance to watch Warren, or if you're at home and you can pull up your Warren stream and you can pull up another stream, this would be the game to do it for.
Little side note here, because you and I started live streaming games. What now? Literally 10 years ago was our first season. Over 10 years ago, we started doing live streams, and almost nobody was doing it back then. And even up until a couple of years ago, it was still a pretty new thing.
Oh yeah.
But I think one thing that COVID has done is it has forced high schools or the AAA. AAA has already been into it, but just organizations that are into live streaming, it has forced the advancement of live streaming of high school sports.
Yes. Because the thing is, especially once you get even in the 5A level somewhat, but 5A and below, most of these towns, there's not a whole lot else to do on Friday night, other than high school football. A lot of these teams are maybe even the heartbeat of their communities. And when you tell people, and when COVID happened that, you can't go to these games, that leaves a lot of people out in the cold. They can't. But fortunately, I think at our level, at least 4A, most of these people have radio broadcasts, but not sure if every one of them do. Especially once you get into 3A and 2A, they don't. We have fortunately, we were able to do it and kind of start it here and have the capability, and now the school's East Lab program's doing it, which is a good thing for them to be doing. And I think hopefully other schools are doing that as well. I know a lot of them do, and if they're not doing it through the school, you've got local media that's doing it, whether it's a radio station that's doing putting their stuff online.
You got some new businesses that have formed. I forget the names of them, but there are a couple that are doing kind of games of the week that are not really affiliated with anybody. They're just doing games of the week on live streams.
Well, that's what the Fearless Friday thing, the KARZ broadcast is just kind of they pick and choose. They televise games throughout the season, at least for a good portion of it, and those games were played on Thursday nights instead of Fridays.
There's even one. I wish I knew the name of it, but there's even one that last year, I don't know if they're still doing it with COVID, but there was one last year that was doing live streams, and they were focusing on small schools. They would not touch anything like above 3A.
Yeah.
They were only doing 2A or 3A.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, it's just, sometimes those people don't have as much of an opportunity to watch those games in a medium like that, whether it's broadcast or even a radio or whatever. I think it forced a lot of teams schools to up their game, like you said, and make sure they were on par. Because the last thing you want is to have a team in the quarterfinals or semifinals and nobody has a way to watch them.
Last couple of games we'll look at here from last week. Ozark, actually within the second half of the bracket, but Ozark knocked off Ashdown 20-7. They will face the winner of Pocahontas and Lamar, which was Pocahontas, winning 36-6. So Ozark and Pocahontas will meet this week.
Yeah, little thought Ashdown might beat Ozark, but we know how tough Ozark is.
Yep.
It's hard to pick against them in the playoffs. And Pocahontas always seems to be pretty good, but they always seem to be that conference doesn't seem to perform as well in the playoffs. So that'll be an interesting game. But good luck to whichever one of them has to play the winner of Stuttgart and Robinson.
Yeah. And then we take a look at the bottom half of the bracket. This is where Warren is located. Of course, Nashville is going to be facing Elkins. Elkins last week beat Bald Knob 44-7. I don't know much about Elkins. but I know they'll have a task on their hands.
Well, we beat Elkins. Was that the first round of the playoffs last year, I think? And it seemed like they were more competitive than I thought they would be.
Yeah.
But you're talking about Nashville. You're talking about the usual suspects.
Well, and it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter what Nashville's record is. It's Nashville. You know? They're gonna give you a battle the day after Thanksgiving if they're still playing.
And they're playing at home. But the wild card in this game is that the fact that Nashville has not played in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
I wonder how that will factor in. It may not matter at all. It may have been a good thing. They may have gotten healthy.
Yeah.
But they'll probably – I imagine they'll be a little rusty. I imagine Elkins may get a quick score on them or two, but then at the end of the game, the final score will be Nashville a lot, Elkins a lot less.
And then, since we've already talked about Arkadelphia and more, and Arkadelphia knocked off Mena 34-7, so Arkadelphia is going to be taking on our Lumberjacks here this week. But whoever wins our game is going to get to face, they're going to get to face the winner of Nashville and Elkins. And
I do think I think Elkins was the 3 seed out of the 1, so I'm assuming whoever wins our game, even if Elkins did pull off an upset, we will have to travel the next week, us or Arkadelphia.
Yeah. Rivercrest beat Pottsville 38-6, and then the game below that, Prairie Grove beat Blytheville 59-34, setting up a Rivercrest and Prairie Grove battle.
Yeah, Rivercrest is always good. They're undefeated. We played them in the second state championship we won. Prairie Grove, solid program. We've played them a couple of times over the last few years, so probably will be a pretty good ball game. Again, sometimes you tend to lean toward the home team, and usually, part of the reason is the home team is the higher seed, but as we've seen in this COVID year, that's not always necessarily being a higher seed doesn't necessarily mean you were a better team in some cases, which I'll touch on this next game that's coming up.
Yeah, Monticello beat Gentry 36-26 last Friday night, and then Crossett beat CAC 68-36. That sets up an 8-4A battle here in this second round of the playoffs between Monticello and Crossett.
Well, we do know we're going to have at least a Monticello Crossett. An 8-4A team will advance to the
somebody's going to
the final 8. So yeah, well, I guess technically, this is not the quarterfinals. The quarterfinals will be next week, and then it'd be the semis.
I think you're right. Yep.
So yeah, I correct myself from earlier, but so I guess whatever. Third round, second round, play-in round, first round, second round.
This is the semifinal quarterfinal.
We're in the third weekend of the playoffs. Put it that way, but. Going back to my previous point, Crossett is our 4 seed, I believe. Monticello's our 2 seed. Monticello beat Gentry, and Gentry was, I think, maybe the 5th seed out of 1-4A. That game, on paper, in a normal year, the 2nd seed from our conference playing against the 5th seed from that conference should probably not be a 10-point spread. It should be a lot more. And then Crossett went into CAC and scored 68 points. They gave up 36. You're probably a little disappointed in your defense.
You can score 68.
But if you score 68, you're really not that worried about it.
If our pretty good defense gives up 38 and we score 68 this week, I'm going to be okay with that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think Crossett and Monticello, they didn't get to play this year because we didn't get to play Crossett. I'm not going to say shocked, but I would be fairly surprised if Monticello beats Crossett. The only thing that you can say is that, again, Monticello is the home team. But I think Crossett probably would have finished in at least the top 2 of our conference had it been a normal season, if not won the thing again.
Crossett's a team I wouldn't want to play right now.
No, I would not want to play Crossett right now.
Not coming off of a 68-point drumming.
And, of course, it just goes back to the fact that CAC was the 2nd seed out of the 2-4A, and that's Stuttgart, CAC, Lone Oak.
Yeah.
Well, CAC and Lone Oak both got it put on them by teams from the 8-4A, and now we were kind of talking in the middle of the season. I think you might remember that, the beginning of the year we thought 8-4A's got a chance to be really good. This may be like the old, 8-4A of old where, almost every team, it's a battle almost every week. Well, then it turned out, maybe not. Maybe the conference isn't as good. Part of that was partly, I think, because CrossFit didn't get to play. Other part of that was that someone like Star City, it was not very good this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we kind of flexed our muscle. But the other question is, how good was that 2-4A? And that's the question Stuttgart has to ask themselves. And they're going to find out. I mean, with Robinson, it's going to be they're going to find out real quick whether or not was their conference really weak or were they just that good, and it didn't matter who they were playing. So it'll be interesting to see. But, yeah, CrossFit Monticello, again, I mean, honestly, yeah, your game of the week, Stuttgart-Robinson. But after that, you're looking at probably our game, more Arkadelphia from a neutral observer, and then Monticello CrossFit.
Yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. Let's move on to – we've got a couple of viewer questions and then one other little thing I want to do. First question is about the past history between this Warren and Arkadelphia team. And does that, to you, do you see that equating into any extra motivation for this Warren team?
Well, the first thing I would say, and I actually just thought about this, but, we've got 2 coaches on our staff that are from Arkadelphia.
Yes, we do.
One of which I know he came here from Arkadelphia. The other one had another job somewhere in between everything. But we got Arkadelphia ties on our roster, which is kind of odd because
to give you an edge,
before this year, we had a bunch of coaches with Nashville ties, and it seems like one of those. I guess if you can't beat them, hire them. I guess, but because we had struggled against. Well, we lost by 1 point in the state championship game to Arkadelphia, a game that really could have gone either way.
Yeah.
But then they beat the mess out of us the next year. But, of course, we all know that was the year. That was Traylon Burke's senior year, and he got hurt, midway through the year. So we were a completely different team after he got hurt. But, I think, for one, that's probably some extra motivation for them. And now – that head coach at Arkadelphia left. I mean, he left before this season and took another job somewhere else. So it's a different coach and different head coach over there. So I don't necessarily think scheme-wise, but personnel. They'll know, those kids that were sophomores and juniors on that team last year, these coaches will know them because they'll be, juniors and seniors this year. So that may give us a bit of an edge. I think that will help us. From a player viewpoint, we were kind of talking, I don't really know exactly how many seniors we do have. And I know a couple of them, like Bird, wasn't here.
Right.
This is his first year playing football at Warren. So,
haven't been part of that.
Yeah.
That
and, of course,
pass.
I think he actually played at Arkadelphia up until he went to Camden. So,
oh, wow.
So there might be some storylines there. But for the few seniors we do have that were on that team, and of course, I guess we probably moved up to 9th graders too that are, they would have been our junior class this year, so they were at least on the sidelines. They might not have got to play against them very much, but when you get beat like that, like we did, where it was a mercy rule at halftime, it doesn't happen very often to us, if not ever. That may be the only time we've ever been mercy ruled at home, especially right at halftime. So, there probably is, maybe there's just some motivation there, a little bit of, now the only thing is you don't want that to turn into negative energy. You don't need that to turn into something goes wrong Friday night, you think, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
Or a whole thing like, man, Arkadelphia, they're scary. No, you don't need to, think like that. But hopefully we're turning it into more positive energy. But, and of course, like we talked about, when you get to this point of the playoffs, a lot of these teams that are left are your usual suspects. I mean, just looking through this, we've played Shiloh in fairly recent. We played them the first year we were streaming.
Mm-hmm.
We've played Malvern since then in the playoffs. Obviously, Dumas is in our conference. We played Gosnell way back when. We play Stuttgart almost every year non-conference. We have a history with Robinson. I mean, we've beaten them the last few times we played them. Ozark last year. Pocahontas, don't remember playing them. Nashville, of course. Elkins, we played last year. Arkadelphia, we've played before. Rivercrest was a long time ago. Prairie Groves recently, of course, Monticello and Crossett are in a conference.
Yeah, if you're
you get to this point, it's people you know.
Well, yeah, for a lot of these schools, they consistently get to this point.
Yes.
Or consistently get to the playoffs, and if you consistently get to the playoffs,
you're going to win a game or two the bracket will fall your way eventually where you are able to make a decent little run.
And you kind of become part of this little club. You know a lot of these teams. Pretty closely. You get to where you know them. Second question here is about it's an offensive question here. It says, although we struggled with it earlier in the season, have you seen a pretty drastic improvement, especially lately, with Bird at quarterback in the 2-quarterback system? So I guess bringing him in.
Yeah. I don't know necessarily if things are different with him per se.
Yeah.
But it sure has run a whole lot smoother than it did in that Stuttgart game.
I wonder if we've tried less. You know what I mean? Like we haven't pushed that formation to do things that it's not meant to do.
I mean, I think that's probably the main point. When we played Stuttgart, the idea, I think, my personal opinion outside looking in, was that we were hoping that he would take the reins and that he would maybe be our quarterback.
Exactly. I think that's what was going on early in the year.
Yeah, and we were trying to change the offense to something that would be more conducive to him.
Yeah.
And, of course, that Stuttgart game, as we remember, we had some linemen out. We had a lot of issues. There were just a lot of issues on offense. Running backs were out. You didn't have Traylon Marshall, and we've seen what difference he makes. So – like I said, I don't necessarily think that Peyton's gotten any better or worse, certainly not worse at it. I think the team has gotten better at running that formation.
Yeah.
And I mean, it helps too.
I think Coach Embry's he's found what he wants to get out of it too.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we saw it. We haven't seen it since then, but early in the year, I think it was the Texarkana game. You had Maddox lined up as normal. You had Bird as wide receiver, and then we shifted.
Yeah.
And they had a guy ran into the backfield, and didn't know what had happened. The referees never even threw a flag, even though it was offsides. But, I mean, that's the thing is that, we have a good portion of the time, Peyton and Maddox are on the field at the same time, and Maddox can shift into where he's a blocking tight end, which I know you think, oh my, you don't want your quarterback to be a blocking tight end, but you probably don't want him to be middle linebacker either. But here we are. There's a lot of things that we can run off of that I don't think we've necessarily shown yet.
It would not surprise me in the least.
But too, I think one other thing, Bird, I think maybe a little bit healthier. We touched on that earlier. I mean, it looked like he had a little bit extra burst of speed the other night running out of that formation. And too, it helps when you can hand it off to Traylon Marshall too. They have to defend that,
Yeah. I think having Marshall and I think just seeing what he did last week will put a little bit of fear into a defense.
Yes.
They'll have to at least watch him.
Yeah.
All right, finally, we are to the main event. Score predictions. What's yours?
Oh, man. I guess I always have to go first, don't I?
I go first. I've got that. I'm confident in this.
Did we get a chance to make one last week? I think we
did. I just don't know if anybody.
Well, let's not do anything different than last week. I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
So,
you're not superstitious, right? You're just
I'm a little stitious. A little stitious, to quote Michael Scott. Man. So, I'm gonna go with Warren 38, Arkadelphia 36.
Yeah, that's about where it's close. We're close. All right. Warren 34, Arkadelphia 28. I got faith in our defense.
That one came through my mind too. I thought, 28 was kind of what I landed on, but I thought, I'm going to give him another touchdown. We'll see.